cops did a good job issuing financially crippling fines that are so serious, they make you Chronister. Wielding his power as a sheriff. Loving someone doesn't only mean telling them they're doing good when they're doing good, unfortunately. It means telling them they've made a monumental mistake when they've made a monumental mistake. When Donald Trump appoints as Surgeon General, what's her name? Jeanette Nishawat, who was a big pharma propagandist for the longest time during COVID. I don't damn you to hell for that, but I certainly say, even if you've repented, you don't get to ascend to a position of power. Trump has picked for DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, one Chad Chronister. Now, I admit, I don't know people by names all the time, but the first thing that you do is you go look up Chad Chronister scandal, or you put in the name scandal if they're a Democrat, and you'll find some sort of disgusting sex scandal, and more often than not, you'll find it with a Republican as well. I put in Chad Chronister COVID. I knew that this guy was a sheriff in Florida and arrested a pastor for defying lockdown orders. Lockdown orders, okay? That's bad. Just following the law is exactly how things happened in different generations. What I found is even worse and utterly disqualifying. Chad Chronister, sheriff, picked to be Drug Enforcement Agency chief. Listen to this. This is him. This is disqualifying, and I'll tell you why in a second.
In the Bay Area, we've lost law enforcement members because of COVID, something that Sheriff Chronister is very aware of.
I put out a policy a few weeks ago that if you're unvaccinated and you have to quarantine or you get ill, you have to use your own accruals. If you're vaccinated and for some reason you fall ill, the sheriff's office is going to cover your time off. This has to be for our 4,000 employees to keep them healthy, but absolutely the public. We have daily interactions with the community that we serve. We certainly don't want to be the ones that are getting them sick.
In the Bay Area.
Appreciate what we just heard there, by the way. There are some mistakes which are forgivable. There are some mistakes which, you'll say, okay, fine. You got duped, you got fooled, fine. Mistakes of fact, mistakes of assessment are different than mistakes of judgment. And a sheriff coming out and saying, at a time of uncertainty, I defer to the experts and I defer to the scientists. Not only that, but I'm going to penalize anybody who does not submit their body to what could only be described as real-time experimentation. That's not a mistake of fact. That is a mistake of judgment. It's an abuse of power. It's a grotesque abuse of power to penalize people who don't get vaccinated, to say, if you had to quarantine, you're going to do it on your own dime. And appreciate that. First of all, I never made the mistake of judgment of locking down my kids and sticking them in a room when they had COVID. When my kids had COVID, I ate food out of their mouth. I'm like, we're all going to get this together and we're going to get it over with. And when they were suggesting in Ontario to quarantine otherwise healthy kids for merely crossing paths with someone who tested positive for COVID, notwithstanding the fact that pretty much a good number of intelligent people knew at the time that you were getting false positives up the wazoo because of the cycling rate of these bogus PCR tests. And so you're getting false positives and then quarantining a young child. They said as young as 5 years old, quarantine for 10 days. And I put out videos. I remember it. I was sitting on my frozen lake, my parents' frozen lake at their cottage. I flipped out a chair and I said, this is absolute child abuse. And any parent who does this should have their children taken away from them. They don't get to say, well, I was just doing what the government told me, so I get to abuse my children. There's a difference between making a mistake to fact, and making a mistake of judgment. And Chad Chronister, wielding his power as a sheriff, saying if you don't get vaccinated and you have to quarantine, you're going to pay for it. If you get sick, you're going to pay for it. But if you get vaccinated and you happen to get sick, well, then we're going to cover it. That's a grotesque abuse of power, almost as much as one sheriff locking up pastors for not following COVID protocol. And I know I have someone who I respect on Twitter say, don't blame him, blame DeSantis, who issued the orders at the time. Horse crap. The reason why people were locked down under COVID in Quebec was because the cops did a good job issuing financially crippling fines to anybody who was out. The reason why it didn't work in Ontario is the police said, we're not going that far. Just following orders. It was the people just following the orders who were the ones carrying out these summary executions. So I'm sorry. In as much as we like the Kash Patel pick, there's no freebies. There's no trust the plan. There's no, he's got some 4D, 5D dimension level chess going on. You got to give, horse trading and racing bull crap. The argument that when the title is irrelevant to the transgression, That's an argument. But there are some transgressions that are so serious, they make you unfit for any position of power, period. His transgression, he's going to be DEA official. He's not going to be HHS or Surgeon General. No, you've already bungled the Surgeon General position. Sorry, you did good on HHS. It doesn't mean you get a pass or a presumption of 7-dimensional chess for the egregiously wrong picks. Jeanette Nishuat, objectively wrong. Disqualifying for positions of power going for it. She's a nice person from what I'm told. On a personal level, she's an extremely nice, wonderful person. There's a lot of extremely nice, wonderful people who are unfit for certain positions because of the mistakes that they've made, which were not mere mistakes of fact, mistakes of judgment. Chad Chronister, abuse of power, unscientific thought, and penalizing people where they have to submit the most by controlling their paychecks. So Chad, you get a hard no from me, dog. It's going to have to be a hard no.